Hey, WEOL and Chronicle Telegram listeners. I'm Rocco Nucci, host of the Hey Coach podcast here on WEOL, and just want to talk about this week's episode, paying tribute and honor to the late, great Coach Bob Walsh, the legendary Bob Walsh, I should say. As our friend Tom Evans put on Facebook during one of the teaser videos this week for the episode, we overuse the term legend a lot, especially in the sports realm. That's not the case when it comes to Coach Bob Walsh. I only got to the station WEOL in 2020, so I obviously missed kind of the heyday of Bob, but I got to see him at a couple of different games when he was in attendance for a couple of Ryan's games. Got to meet him a couple of times, and so was really excited to kind of cobble this episode together this week. You're going to hear from a number of different voices, former colleagues and coaches with Bob, broadcasters here on WEOL that dealt with him over the years, and just a number of different stories and memories that these guys are going to share about Bob. So just want to thank everybody that got involved with this project, this episode this week. A big thanks to Jared Kozar for a lot of the inspiration on, who to talk to and who to get sound from. So without further ado, let's hear from some of your local Lorain County folks on the legendary, late, great Coach Bob Walsh.
I guess if there was one trait, one attribute that really defined Bob Walsh, it was that quest, that constant striving for excellence. He wanted his players to constantly get better. He wanted his team to get better. He wanted them to play at a peak level. Not perfect. I think Bob was well aware of the fact that nobody's perfect, no team is perfect, no game is perfect, but he was unrelenting in the quest to be improving, to be excellent at everything you did or tried to do. And I think that was very reflective in his coaching. That resume speaks for itself. He'll go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, high school basketball coach in Lorain County history. 2 state championships at 2 different schools, Clearview in 1974, Oberlin in 1986. Of course, success everywhere he went. It started at Clearview and then on to Oberlin, but certainly Vermilion, Elyria Catholic, Elyria, the district appearances, the regional appearances speak for themselves. But it was that unrelenting quest to be excellent in everything you do. And I think that defined Bob, not only as a coach, but as a man. He demanded excellence. He looked at the basketball court and a practice session or a game as a learning environment. And so you learned how to strive to be excellence and overcome mistakes. Because as I said earlier, Bob knew that certainly there wasn't going to be perfection. But aside from being a great, and I mean great, high school basketball coach, Bob was also a great man, a great family man, beloved husband of Maureen. Boy, they had such a special relationship. So proud of his 2 children, Mike and Kristen, and then, of course, later on, his grandchildren, who he just revered, and obviously was very proud of everything they did. So Bob and I got to know each other in that very special 1986 state championship year for Oberlin. It was my very first year of doing high school basketball play-by-play in Lorain County, and what a ride to go all the way to the state final. And Bob treated me like a veteran broadcaster. I was fresh out of college at 22 years old, but he respected me, and I grew to respect and love Bob Walsh. Sad at his passing, but so happy that I had such a great relationship, such a friendship with Bob. I love the guy, and he will be missed, but his impact, his legacy is so enduring that the name Bob Walsh will never be forgotten.
Rob Polinsky with WEOL Sports. My thoughts on Coach Bob Walsh, obviously legendary boys basketball coach, not only in Lorain County, but I think when I think back on Coach, you think of the influence that he had on the entire state. Bob winning 2 state championships, at Clearview and Oberlin before my time at WEOL, but as a young man growing up in Norwalk, obviously I knew that he had won a state title at Clearview. I was working in Norwalk, and when he won the state title in '86 at Oberlin, one of my best friend's brothers was on the '86 team at Wellington that defeated Oberlin in the regular season that year. So I knew of that team. I was a year out of high school at the time. I paid a lot of attention to high school sports, so I knew certainly the teams, that Bob was going up against at Oberlin, the Lorain Catholics, the Wellingtons, the teams like that. And, when I think the coach, I guess I think when I first got to know him, I didn't realize what a great football fan he was and that he wanted to be a football coach. And of course, with his Western Pennsylvania ties, Coach was a tremendous, big-time Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And even though he was that, we became good friends. But, when I think of Coach, I'll always smile and think about a couple things. One, when he coached against you, in my mind, he didn't worry about the opposition so much. He was more focused on what his team would do and the efficiency of his team and how he wanted his teams to play. And whether you saw his teams way back in the day or you saw it at the very end when he was at Elyria, Coach was very consistent, and he got, I think, the most out of his kids. He was a great motivator. He had the rare ability as he got older to still relate to kids, which to me is not the easiest thing to do. When you think about coaches, he was not set in his ways, but Coach just had tremendous insight and loved high school basketball and loved trying to help the kids. I think to his coaching tree and to the helping out of like a Kurt Habermehl and guys like that and what they've gone on to do. And I'm sure if you would ask some of those guys, a lot of what they do was based on what they learned from Coach. You immediately think of John Szalay, the impact that he had on John is a player. John, of course, was the point guard on that state championship team at '74. And then what John took from Coach. And then at the very end, what I thought was great was after Bob had retired as a head coach, that John brought him on for a couple of years at Clearview, and to see that role reversal where John was the head coach and Bob was his assistant. That was almost like a father-son relationship, and I thought that was great to see, and I give Coach Szalay a lot of credit for that, and I also think that probably really, really helped Bob to be able to sit there with his friend and be able to coach at Clearview where it all started to end like that. I think of the Kurt Habermehls at Vermillion, that Coach Walsh coached, and how tremendous, what Kurt thought of him, and all the other coaches in Lorain County in the coaching tree, and of course his son Mike Walsh, his grandson Ryan, and their careers, speak for themselves and what they've done. I also, his sense of humor, and he made me a better broadcaster because he kind of questioned what you did sometimes. He wanted to know what you were doing sometimes. He made me a better broadcaster. I mean, plain and simple. You didn't want to let Coach down. You wanted to know that he knew that you had done your homework to prepare for his team, for his game. And I always admired that about him. And, Coach will be greatly missed. So, again, to his family, to his son and daughter and everybody else, my sincere condolences and best wishes. But I'll also have a fond memory down at the Ohio State boys basketball tournament. One evening, I sat in Coach's hotel room, and we chit-chatted about all kinds of things. And to sit there in that room and to basically listen and learn was a great memory that I'm always going to have, that I'll always cherish. So again, Bob, thanks for everything that you did for us, and just want to wish you the best, and condolences to your family, and Coach, rest in peace.
I was very fortunate to have grown up, watching Coach Walsh coach Clearview basketball, going to the games ever since I could remember. And when I got a chance to be a high school player, it meant the world to me to be able to play for Coach Walsh and Clearview. And fortunately, I came around where we had some outstanding players on our team, like Larry Harris and Randy DeLugas, and of course Larry Fortner. And we were pretty good, and we were able to win a state championship. And Coach Walsh was the leader of us all the way. all the way. Never put too much pressure on us, kept us grounded, and gave us confidence. I know he gave me a lot of confidence as a player. And, to be able to go to state and to be able to win state like Coach Walsh was able to do twice at Clearview and at Oberlin is really a great accomplishment by Coach. And, I remember when we made state, we were probably kind of tight at practice. He pulled us together and brought us over to the sideline and said, hey, just do what you've been doing. Don't make this, it is big. He said, it's the big show, but don't make it harder or more bigger than it should be. Just do what you do, play the way you play, and we'll be fine. And sure enough, that was the case. I remember at state, we played on Thursday night in the semi, and then we played Saturday morning in the finals. And we played the early game, full house. Larry and Scoochie, of course, helped pull us through, and we were able to get the win. And I remember Coach Novak, our assistant coach, told Coach Walsh, if we win, I'm going to have you light up a cigar at center court in St. John's Arena. And sure enough, they did, to celebrate the victory. Coach Walsh had a kind of a rough exterior, a tough exterior, but he had a heart of gold. Countless times, he helped me make decisions, coaching decisions, anything that was important. He was more than willing to offer his leadership and his advice when I asked him. One of the things a lot of people may not know is, Coach Walsh was a pretty deeply religious man. He was a lector at St. Paul Church. I remember Sunday morning while we were in Columbus, we went to church together, him and Coach Novak and I. He probably promised my mom that he would take me to church, but sure enough, there we were, all three of us, Sunday morning after winning the state championship, attending Mass. And he kept, he didn't preach to us, but by example, he showed what a leader he was and how important religion was to him. I know when I graduated, as a gift, he gave me a St. Jude medal, which I've kept since. It's in my wallet. I carry it everywhere I go. It was in my pocket when I coached. Brought a little bit closer, maybe some divine intervention could help. And I don't mind admitting now that sometimes I would pull it out of my pocket and hold it in my hand or stick it behind or my watch during tight moments of the ball game. And, those are just things that I remember now, about Coach Walsh. When I did coach and he was coaching somewhere else or when he retired, and I sometimes call him, can you come to practice tomorrow? My team's not really playing defense like I hope they could, or I know they could. And sure enough, next practice, there's Coach Walsh helping instruct the players. I often kid that when he came back, when I asked him if he would mind being an assistant, this was after he had already retired. He's probably 81 or 82 years old. And he said, sure. I definitely appreciated it greatly. I know when I talked to Mike after he gave me the news of Coach's passing, he said that, that was a good thing that Coach came and helped you during those times. It kept him going. He deeply missed Maureen when she passed away, and that kept him kind of involved and going. And I often kid, I had a couple of wins, and then when Coach Walsh sat by me on the sidelines, someone said, you're close to 400. And sure enough, we reached that, but I never would have been able to do that without Coach Walsh's help. As a advice for a coach, he often would say, don't make the kids overthink. Don't make it so complicated that they can't, go to their strengths and they can't be instinctive. So I always kept that in mind. There's a lot of plays that look good on paper. This guy goes that way, that guy screens this way, but once we had confidence in each other and understood each other, he didn't really diagram a lot of plays during the timeout. He would say, go to your strengths, and he would teach us how to do that in the correct way. He'll be missed deeply by many people. He shared his knowledge. I know he shared a lot with me. Over 50 years, I've had a relationship with Coach Walsh. And I'm not so sure how many people can say that about their high school coach when they were 16 or 17 years old, and now I'm 68 years old, and till the last day, I had a relationship with Coach. I know when I was fortunate enough to get into Clearview's Hall of Fame and the Lorain Coaches Hall of Fame, and eventually the Lorain Hall of Fame, Coach Walsh came to each one of those events for me. He was older back then, but he was there. He was there to show his support and his appreciation of our relationship, and that means the world to me. No doubt about that. I know after one of them, I drove Coach home, and I got out of the car and kind of helped him into the house. It was night already, and I said, "Thanks for coming, Coach." And he said, "Well, you're the reason I came tonight." And I told him I loved him. I'm glad I did. And he said, "I love you back." And that's not easy for men to say a lot, but that's how I felt. So I'm very fortunate to have had this relationship with Coach. I can't say enough positive things about him and his family. Mike was our ball boy back in 74 when we won the state championship. And, Maureen came to my game when we got victory number 300. She came to the game at Clearview. And, I think that's the last time I was able to see her. And he always valued his family. That always came first. And, he told me once, "John, when all the coaching's done, that's what you have. You have your family." And, he was blessed with a great family and great support. And he valued that tremendously. So, thank you again for allowing me to share some of my memories, some of my thoughts. We lost a great man, not just a great coach, but a great man. And he's going to be missed by many, and including me, very, very much so. So, God bless his family. I send him, all of my support and condolences, but mostly thanks to Coach Walsh for everything he did for me. I love him for sure. Thank you.
You cannot talk about Lorain County basketball without talking about Coach Bob Walsh. It was such an honor and a pleasure and a learning experience to really be tutored and coached by Walsh. What a tremendous career that he had on the basketball court. And all of us could really highlight his accomplishments. I graduated from Oberlin High School in 1990, and his tenure at Oberlin High School, if I could brag, was probably the most successful run in Lorain County history. If you look at his records at Oberlin, truly astonishing, amazing. And he did it with homegrown athletes. No, kids did not transfer in and out of schools at that time. No, kids did not open enrolled at that time. And Bob Walsh took the talent that he had and molded individuals into a team. Yes, he had great athletes, but sometimes you could have great athletes and not be successful on the basketball court. So he was tremendous at just being able to take a collection of players and make a team out of it. Number one is holding kids accountable. Coach Walsh did that each and every day. I was laughing with another player of Coach Walsh at our practice, and I'm reminded of his two little fingers, where if you made a mistake, and Coach Walsh, and he used to call it mental mistakes. You can make physical mistakes all the time, miss a layup, miss jump shots, and he understood that. But he did not tolerate making mental mistakes. And there was a time where I made a mental mistakes. I did not jump to the ball. And if you know Coach Walsh, he was all about defense. And I did not get in the midline, was not ball side help at all. And a gentleman drove to the basket, and it was my responsibility, and he took me out the game. And he took his two fingers, and it felt like steel, and he gently touched my knee a few times and reminded me of making mental mistakes. And those are the lessons that I learned from Coach Walsh, is that there are things that you have to do. And one of the things that you had to do with Coach Walsh was to be respectful, do well in the classroom, and making sure that you do not make mental mistakes. And as a teacher now, those are the same lessons that I teach my students, even in the classroom. I don't think many people realize that Coach Walsh was more than a basketball coach. He was a teacher. And being in his class, Coach Walsh realized that transferable skills goes a long ways. The things that you learn in the classroom are the things that will help you be successful on the basketball court. Are you dependable? That means, are you taking the time to do your schoolwork so you are eligible to play? Are you trustworthy? Can he trust you? And that meant a lot. And when Coach Walsh played you, he is really saying that I trust you. And that meant so much to me in my growth as a basketball player at Oberlin, graduating in 1990, furthering myself as an educator, and also furthering myself as a varsity basketball coach. That idea of holding people accountable. And Coach Walsh was a gentle giant, in a sense, not by status, but by his demeanor, where sometimes he would look angry and mad, but deep down inside, you could joke with them. In the cafeteria at Oberlin, he used to walk through, making sure that his basketball players are doing well. And we used to make jokes all the time. And he had that little smirk on his face, and he would laugh, and then he will joke on you. And the whole cafeteria used to laugh. And that's the type of person he was. Just a kind-hearted individual. And he will truly, truly be missed. Missed on the sidelines. When I first started coaching, Coach Walsh was the assistant coach at Clearview. And Oberlin and Clearview have this tremendous rivalry, a friendly rivalry. I believe because of Coach Walsh, where Coach Walsh coached at Clearview and then coached at Oberlin. And that just stayed with us in terms of this friendly rivalry that I had with Coach Szalay and the other tremendous individuals at Clearview. And when I first started coaching, I used to tease Coach Walsh all the time, like, hey, you could come to my sideline and help me out. And so he will be missed. His courtside demeanor with his towel will be missed as well. And I am just so honored and blessed to have a coach like Walsh, a coach that was kind, a coach that had empathy for his players, a coach that allowed his players to be individuals. And he brought all of that together and made a team. And the teams that he had were second to none. And there would never, ever be another coach that demanded the respect like Coach Walsh.
So I started my coaching career in 1996 at Vermilion. I had just gotten out of college from Ashland University, and I remember getting approached by Bob asking me to be his freshman coach. He was currently the head coach at Vermilion at that time. And I remember immediately being kind of having a little bit of anxiety, being stressed, being a little intimidated because I had never met Bob before, but I had had the chance to watch a lot of his teams play in the for Oberlin when they made the state tournament run, and I remember seeing how intense he was. I remember seeing how demanding he was, and how how he just reacted, and coached his kids so well during games, and it was kind of an intimidating thing to do. And so I had a little bit of worry going into that coaching segment of my career, being a 23-year-old, of getting to coach under Bob Walsh. And I'll tell you, everything that I worried about, it was totally the opposite. Bob was the greatest person to coach for. He was very, very helpful, but not too helpful. He wanted me to do my own thing, but he was also one of those guys that he would always come and talk to me and just see how I was, doing, and making sure I had everything I needed. And he certainly was the guy that got me started off in my, coaching career. One of the things I always remember, we had a kid who was a little bit of a problem that first year that I coached. Just a tough kid to coach. Always you're spending more time trying to get him right than you were coaching the team at times. And I remember the next year when we had tryouts that next year, that same young man came out for basketball. And as we were stretching for tryouts, I remember, Bob knew that this kid was a little bit of a problem. Bob never really got on him or anything, but he knew that this kid was a little bit of a problem, and he continued to be a little bit of a problem in school that year. And I remember Bob going up to the young man and saying, "Hey, your name is so-and-so, correct?" And the young man said, "Yes, coach, that's me." He goes, "Well, I'm sorry, son, you're cut." And that kind of, I giggle about that today, but that kind of let me know right then and there that, Bob was going to run a program a certain way, and he demanded that kids respected the coaches and that coaches respected the kids. And it's a funny story, but it's also a story to let you know how he was and how he coached the game of basketball. And he was always teaching lessons. And I'll tell you, to this day, that kid will come up to me to this day and say, I remember when I got cut before tryouts even started that day, coach, and I also remember how much of an idiot I was, and I'm sorry for that. And that's just kind of the person that Bob was. He was always teaching. He was always trying to get kids to do the right thing. And certainly it played into my coaching career for the past 25 years. When 1999 happened, Vermilion was getting into a new conference, the Ohio Heartland Conference, and our closest game that year was going to be at Ashland High School, which was an hour away, and our furthest game was either going to be at Orville High School or Marion High School, which was 2 hours away. And riding on a school bus that long was going to be pretty tough, because the prior year we had played some of those teams, and I remember Bob telling me, he goes, "This is miserable. I don't know if I can do this." Well, once we got into that conference, after the 98 season, I believe, Bob came up to me and he said, "Listen, there's no way that I'm going to ride these buses for all these trips. I'm going to resign from coaching at Vermilion, and I want you to have the job." And at the time, I think I was either a 25 or 26-year-old who definitely was not ready to be a head basketball coach, but Bob certainly thought I was ready after 3 years of coaching. And he went to the administration and recommended me for that job. And I'll never forget, I interviewed for the job and had a couple different interviews for that job. And I'll never forget the day that I got hired, Bob surprised me at the middle school where I teach. And he had balloons and stuff. And he was the one that told me that I was hired. And that was probably more special than any other thing that's happened to me in my coaching career, because the guy that I learned from, the guy that I loved coaching for, was the guy that told me that I was going to be the next head coach at Vermilion High School. And that was pretty special. And I always remember that day, because while we weren't coaching anymore after that day together, we kind of just had that, trust with each other for the rest of our coaching careers, where we would always often call each other and see how things were going, and making sure he was always the guy that was making sure everything was okay with me. And especially when we were losing early in my career, he was a guy that would call me probably weekly and just see how I was doing, and tell me, you're a good coach, you're doing what you should be doing. It's just, you're in a tough situation right now. And, as the years went on and we coached against each other quite often, as much as you want to win a game, those interactions that you would have before the game and after the game, and those phone calls you would have when the game was over, were probably more special to me than the actual game itself. You don't, it's you're sure you want to win and lose, and sure you're super competitive and intense about what's going on, but getting a chance to coach against the guy that brought you up as a coach and the guy that made you the coach you are was always special. And it was hard to be upset when you lost to Bob Walsh, because you knew how great of a coach he was, and you knew he was in it for the right reasons. So I'll always cherish those years I had as a coach under Bob Walsh, and all that. But I think I'll probably cherish more all the conversations we had, besides that or outside of basketball. There was many calls that he would give me, and it was, we never really mentioned basketball at times. He just wanted to know how my family was doing. He wanted to know how my kids were. He wanted to know, if everything was going good, and how just my life was going at the time. And I really appreciate that. And I'll always cherish all those times that we had together, both as in the coaching profession, but more so outside of the coaching profession.
When you think about Lorain County basketball, the first thing that comes to mind is Coach Bob Walsh. Growing up, in Elyria and watching Lorain County basketball, that's the name that you associate with Lorain County basketball. I remember hearing about his teams at Clearview in the state championship and those great players, and then growing up watching his great Oberlin teams. I remember watching his Oberlin teams versus Jimmy Jackson and Toledo Maycomber in the regionals, and winning the state title at Oberlin. But at Lorain County basketball, he's been at so many different schools, so many different communities, and affected so many different players from different communities. That's what sticks out the most. And then becoming such good friends with his family. His son, Mike Walsh, was my JV coach when I was a freshman. That kind of comes full circle. He was on a staff at Elyria when I played, and then came back and coached under Mike. And then when I started with the boys, I was assistant under Bob at Elyria when we won a district title in 07, 08. And then getting a chance to coach his grandson, Ryan Walsh, who is an outstanding player, extremely hard worker, competitor, and you can see where he gets that competitiveness from, and growing up and seeing Bob and then being able to coach with him, the thing that sticks out is keeping the game of basketball simple. I remember being nervous when I was going to be an assistant with him and telling Mike, he goes, "Mike, I don't know what to expect." He goes, "Just go talk to my dad. It's fine." And you go talk to him, he goes, "Brett, it's basketball. Keep it simple. They play hard, compete, the competitiveness, that fire, that's what he instills in the players, but then the off-court relationship that he had with them as well." You can see that carry down to Mike and then to Ryan as well. And then becoming such good family friends, Mike being in my wedding, and just that relationship I've built with Bob over the years. Even when I was a head coach, seeing him on the sidelines at games, at Mike's games, at Ryan's games, always being there and, always having the one-liners. And then, the one, story that kind of sticks out, I talked about Mike last night, one of the first times we went scouting, and Bob's like, I'll drive, Brad. He goes, "I know where I'm going," not real technology savvy, and he goes, "I know where we're going, and we're going to Parma, Normandy." And I didn't know. I would plug it in my phone. Well, Bob knows where he's going. It's raining. He goes, oh, there it is. And just crosses the median with his car. He goes, we're fine. So that was my first scouting trip with him that I'll always remember. But, his teams, the one game I remember is always playing against Jimmy Jack, or seeing his Oberlin team play against Jimmy Jackson and being there and witnessing that. So those are some of the fond memories that I'll have. And Bob will be missed by Lorain County basketball. He'll be missed by a lot of former players, a lot of former and current coaches. But when you think about Lorain County basketball, you think about Bob Walsh.
Hi, everyone. It's Mike Walsh. I'm here to talk a little bit about my dad, Coach Bob Walsh. Unfortunately, as some of you probably know, he passed away this past weekend at 87 years old, and it's pretty hard. But there's a lot of good things to talk about, and especially on, I know that this is a sports show, so from the sports aspect, obviously he had a great coaching career, and I got to see that firsthand, and it was fun. I got to be with him as a manager when I was a little guy, and then I had the fortune to play for him, and for 4 years at Clearview through some really good years, and that was fun. And then later on, I ended up getting to be an assistant with him and help him out in that first year when I was a volunteer for him, and he won the state championship at Oberlin, and so I got to see that and be with that, and then it went to the other side. It's kind of a unique situation. Is I went to Elyria High, and all of a sudden I was Elyria High's head varsity coach, and he was at Vermilion at the time, and we had to play against each other a few times, and I thought I was going to be really excited about that, and after it happened, it wasn't as exciting as I thought. It was hard to play against your dad, but it was fun to play against him, and and then right on through, after he retired from being a head coach, he actually came over and was my assistant for a few years on the girls' side when I was a girls' basketball coach at Elyria High School. So I got to have him through, a little bit of everything, and saw a lot of really fun and good things, and learned a lot from him. A lot of people have seen him on the sidelines, and he was a tough coach. He was in his younger years, he was definitely that more flamboyant coach out there, and aggressive, but people didn't know that, and behind the scenes, Bob Walsh was a totally different person. He was a quiet guy, nice, probably one of the nicest guys you could ever meet in your life. I mean, that's what I hear from so many people, that is very exciting and meaningful to me, is what people talk about. Man, your dad was such a good person. And again, this is a sports, so we're trying to stay on that side of it. And so we'll talk more a little bit about that. Playing for him was tough. And there's a lot of people, I know all the guys that played for him at some point were probably like, man, this guy is crazy. I'm done. I can't do it. We all went through that. I did. It's guys at Oberlin, at Vermilion, Elyria Catholic, Elyria High, Clearview. We all saw the side that made him who he was. His ability to draw things out of people that they didn't even know they had. The ability to work, the ability to become a team, the ability to do the little things that, I don't have to be the guy that scores 20. I just want to be a part of this team. And he was very good at doing that, and molding a team, and making them maybe believe in themselves even more than they did. I think of my senior year, our tallest guy was 6 foot, and we played in the Lakeland Conference, and we won the conference that year, and we had some good guards, and we had a solid team, but he just made us believe, and we just believe we play for Bob Walsh, and we play for Clearview, and we just don't lose. And we won more close games my senior year. It was unbelievable. How we won the conference that year, I still is one of my dad's best coaching jobs ever. He took a team of guys that were just willing to do anything they had to do to be able to win. And that, again, that's what I think his biggest thing was. It wasn't the X's and the O's. Because my dad wasn't an X and O guy. He was more of give you your, fair share to go out and do what you can do, but be within what we do as a team. And he just knew how to press the buttons. He knew how to get people to play and do things, maybe over exceed the things that they could do. So that was, I think, his best quality of drawing people out to be competitive and want to win together. You look at his state championship team at Oberlin, and he had 7 guys that averaged between like 12.8 and 10. So 7 guys in double figures. Talk about a team. That team was so good, it was unbelievable. But they didn't care. They didn't care who scored. They didn't care if they scored. They just cared if they had a dub at the end of the night. And they got a lot of those. And that was a really, really, really talented group of not only young men, but basketball players, and just so fun to watch. And I'll be honest, that was a great job. You know, my dad be able to put those guys together and put aside what their personal goals were to have a chance to be special and be one of the best teams in the history of Lorain County, and they did that. And I think my dad had a lot to do with that. So he would say stuff to me on the bench that I was like, there's no way I would do that. And he'd say, no, think about this, dude. I think we should double this. I think we should double team. And I said, what if we double team? They're going to leave them open for the 3, and they've already hit 9 threes. And he's like, trust me. And we did that one game at halftime, and we went out and came back and beat this team. And I was like, I would have never even have thought of that. So there's certain things that he still had, and it was, you know, it was unique to watch him do what he does, because he was good at it. And I think he built trust with his players, and he built trust with the people that worked with him and for him. And I think that's what made it. He made it it was all about the team, and it was all about doing things together, from the person that was the best player to the one that was sitting at the end of the bench getting water for people. He made them feel important. So. And I also enjoyed his later years when he got the opportunity to watch my kids play. You know, he got to watch Ryan play, and he really enjoyed that. It was something that I think kept him going, man. Getting a chance to see Ryan play in high school and going on to college where he's at down at Nova. He actually got to get down there and watch him play a game last year, and man, that was great. And then now, my youngest son Liam's coming up, and he was just sitting on the bench the other day with me in a summer league game, and right next to me, and while Liam's teams were playing, and you know, and that was fun. He was still involved in it, and he loved it, you know. And then my daughter, she's a volleyballer and a dancer, and he would still want to know all about that and be involved with that. So those are the things that kept him going. The kids, he did everything for kids his whole life, and I think the kids, his grandkids and other people at the end really helped him get where he was and keep him going in his older years. So gonna miss him. I put him on the Mount Rushmore of Lorain County basketball. We've had some great coaches here. You know, I always look back, you know, him. You got Bob Walsh, you got Mitch Gillum, he's gone now, and you got Bob Jenna, who's gone now, and Larry Stark, who's gone now, and then Jim Lawhead, who's still here. So Jim, I'm putting it on you. You're the one that's still here, and but those guys, man, old school basketball. All maybe a little different, but man, were they the same, and competitive, and got after it. It was a great time to watch Lorain County basketball, and I'm glad I got a chance to see it. And I know all the people that did in all those years, got to see my dad and the things that he did, and all these other coaches. Wow, what a great time for Lorain County boys basketball back in the day. Unbelievable. I'm gonna miss him, love him, and I'm so glad that he was my dad, and that's probably the most important thing.